don't have to worry about me letting him get away either.
Well, I'm not worried about you, Hoss. I just hope you're right about Jim Layton.
For millions, he was the gentle giant Hoss Cartwright, the heart and soul of Bonanza. His smile was a national treasure, his size matched only by his on-screen kindness. But behind the myth of Dan Blocker was a man few truly knew. Now, at 66, his son, actor Dirk Blocker, has finally clarified the heartbreaking truth we all suspected.
And my father was on a show where that existed, so I grew up seeing that, and my dad was on Bonanza back in the day.
The man who brought joy to so many was fighting a quiet battle against the very fame that made him a legend. The real story isn't just about his shocking death at 43. It's a disclosure that makes you question the version of the story you were told, and it starts long before the fame. But to understand these revelations, it's essential to understand the early events that led his son to unveil these long-hidden secrets. From 14 pounds to a Ponderosa legend. Long before he was Hoss, Dan Blocker's life began with a record-breaking arrival that seemed to predict a legendary future. Born as Bobby Dan Davis Blocker in DeKalb, Texas in 1928, he was the largest baby ever born in Bowie County, weighing in at a staggering 14 pounds. From his first day, he was larger than life. By age 12, he had already reached 6 feet in height and tipped the scales at 200 pounds, earning him the fitting nickname, the Biggin, from his neighbors. But to define him by his size would be to miss the point entirely. Blocker wasn't the simple, uneducated country boy he would one day portray. He was a scholar and a soldier, a man of deep intellect and quiet principle. After graduating from college, he earned a master's degree in dramatic arts, with plans to become a teacher. He was a thinker, a reader, a man who understood the nuances of character far beyond the scripts he was given. But before he could pursue a life in academia, history intervened. The Korean War called, and Blocker served as an infantry sergeant. It was a brutal, harrowing experience that he rarely spoke of in later years. He was wounded in action and received a Purple Heart for his service, a quiet testament to a toughness forged in real-world conflict, not on a Hollywood soundstage. This was the man who would become Hoss, a war hero with a master's degree, a gentle soul with a core of unshakable integrity. The war hero who became Hoss. His journey to becoming a television icon didn't start in an audition room, but in a classroom, with a family to feed and no idea that destiny was about to knock. After the war, Blocker was teaching English and drama in Texas and California, taking odd jobs to support his growing family. Acting was a side hustle, a way to make ends meet, not a passion he was pursuing. He saw himself as an academic, a teacher. In his own mind, the stage was a temporary diversion. He landed small parts in westerns, often playing the heavy or the bouncer, roles that saw his size but missed his soul. He was frequently typecast as the menacing villain, a stark contrast to his true nature, which frustrated him immensely. His friends knew him as a man of literature and philosophy, yet casting directors could only see a mountain of a man. Then, in 1959, everything changed. He was cast as Eric Hoss Cartwright on a new NBC series called Bonanza. The character was written as a gullible but lovable giant. Blocker, however, saw an opportunity to create something more. He infused the character with a profound depth and humanity. Inspired by the words of 18th century Quaker missionary Stephen Grelle to "do all the good you can," Dan brought this philosophy to life through Hoss. He made Hoss the moral center of the show, a figure of immense strength and even greater compassion. America fell in love. Bonanza became a cultural phenomenon, rocketing to #1 in the ratings and staying there for years. Blocker, alongside his co-stars, became one of the most recognizable faces on Earth. But as the world screamed, "Hoss!" wherever he went, a quiet, unsettling thought began to form. Dan Blocker, the man, was starting to disappear inside the character he played. The fame he never sought was quickly becoming a cage. Prisoner of his own fame, at the absolute peak of his fame, with the world at his feet, Dan Blocker was quietly planning his escape. By the mid-1960s, Bonanza was more than a TV show. It was an institution. Blocker was a global superstar, earning a fortune and beloved by an audience that spanned generations. But the public image came at a steep private cost. The production schedule was grueling, and the studio placed immense pressure on him to maintain his Hoss weight. This led to a constant and frustrating battle with his health. In a twist of irony, he even became a co-owner of the Ponderosa Steakhouse chain, a nod to the show that demanded he maintain his larger-than-life size. More than that, Blocker, a man of quiet conviction, grew deeply disillusioned with the superficiality of Hollywood. He couldn't go out for a simple dinner with his wife without being mobbed by fans who saw him not as a person, but as a public commodity. This was never clearer than during a filming trip to the segregated South. When a hotel refused to accommodate the African-American members of the Bonanza crew, Blocker stepped forward and announced with iron resolve that if the hotel refused to serve everyone, then no one from the cast and crew would stay there. He used his fame as a shield for others, even as it suffocated him personally. He felt trapped. The man who valued integrity and privacy was living a life of performance and exposure. So he made a radical decision. In the late 60s, he moved his entire family to a quiet home in Switzerland, seeking refuge from the relentless glare of the spotlight. It was a clear and powerful signal. The man everyone wanted a piece of was desperately trying to buy back his own life and give his children the normality he had lost. A son's quiet confession. In the spring of 1972, a routine medical procedure went tragically wrong. On May 13, 1972, following a seemingly successful gallbladder surgery, Dan Blocker died suddenly from a massive pulmonary embolism. He was only 43 years old. The news sent a shockwave across the globe. For his teenage son, Dirk, the world shattered. It wasn't just the loss of a father. It was witnessing his family's private grief become a public spectacle. In the vacuum of that grief, a cruel and persistent myth took root. That Blocker was so large, he had to be buried in a piano box-sized coffin. For 50 years, this story circulated, a final, undignified piece of gossip. The rumor was completely false. The truth is that Dan Blocker was laid to rest in a standard casket. But this clarification was part of a much deeper truth his son Dirk shared. This is his real confession. Watching his father, a brilliant and sensitive man, become consumed by the character of Hoss, witnessing his desperate search for privacy in the mountains of Switzerland, and then experiencing his sudden, shocking death and the media circus that followed, it all forged an unshakable conviction in young Dirk. Stardom wasn't a dream, it was a nightmare. He saw firsthand that the price of that level of fame was a piece of your soul. His confession isn't one of scandal, but of a profound, life-altering choice. He would follow his father into acting, but he would never, ever chase the spotlight that had burned his father out. How Hoss's death ended Bonanza. Dan Blocker's death didn't just leave a hole in his family, it left a void at the heart of Bonanza from which the show would never recover. The producers faced an unprecedented challenge. For the first time in American television history, a major series chose to acknowledge the death of a main character, rather than simply replacing the actor. The season 14 premiere, Forever, saw the Cartwrights grieve for Hoss. It was a gut-wrenching moment for television, blurring the line between fiction and the cast's very real sorrow. It was a poignant tribute, but it also signaled the end. The magical dynamic between the brothers was shattered. Hoss was the show's anchor, its emotional core, and without him, the Ponderosa felt empty. The ratings plummeted. After 14 seasons and 431 episodes, Bonanza was canceled just months after Blocker's passing. He was never just a part of the show. With emphasis, he was the show. For his son Dirk, this experience solidified the lesson his father's life had taught him. He would seek the one thing his father had been so cruelly denied: a quiet life. His son's life-changing choice. While Dan Blocker left behind a legacy of kindness, his greatest lesson was one his son took to heart: that a good life is more important than a famous one. For over 4 decades, Dirk Blocker has built a career on this principle. He has become one of Hollywood's most reliable and respected character actors, with a beloved run as Detective Hitchcock on the hit sitcom Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He is a face you know and a talent you respect, but he has masterfully avoided the crushing weight of stardom. He deliberately chose a path that allowed him to be a craftsman, to go home at night, and to be a present husband and father, freedoms his own father had to fight for. Now 66, Dirk reflects on his father's life not with bitterness, but with a deep understanding of the choices made. He saw a man who achieved the pinnacle of success only to realize it wasn't what he wanted. Dan Blocker's true legacy wasn't Bonanza. It was the roadmap for a more balanced life that he inadvertently gave his son. By choosing the path of a character actor, Dirk found a way to honor his father's passion for the craft without repeating his suffering. He embraced Dan's true values, humility, family, and integrity, rather than chasing the fame that ultimately became a burden. In doing so, he has lived the quiet, authentic life his father always dreamed of. In the end, Dan Blocker's greatest role wasn't Hoss Cartwright. It was the father whose life served as a powerful and cautionary lesson. We began with the image of a TV icon and discovered a quiet intellectual, a war hero, and a family man who valued privacy above all else. His son Dirk's confession wasn't a dark secret, but a profound truth about the human cost of celebrity. He chose to honor his father not by replicating his fame, but by learning from his struggle, proving that a legacy is measured in character, not celebrity. It leaves us with a final question. What is the true price of fame? And what does it really mean to live a successful life? Let us know your thoughts on Dan Blocker's incredible life in the comments below. And for more stories that uncover the truth behind the legends, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.